That is from the forgotten 80s minor hit Sausalito Summer Night by Diesel, and it's particularly appropriate bumper music because, what, is it 87 degrees now here in Philadelphia? Maybe not that high. It's not that humid, so it's not that bad. But we generally don't get weather like this before primary elections, but we are having primary elections 8 days from now, and the U.S. Senate race is heating up, and we're going to talk to Sam Rohrer, who's been on the show before. Sam, welcome.
Adam, good to be with you on this very warm summer day.
How are you? Yeah. How are you enjoying? First of all, I got to ask a question before we get to the home stretch of your campaign. What are you going to do when you get to Capitol Hills about this major allergy problem we're having in the Philadelphia area right now?
Well, you know, under the mindset of this president and his enablers, I think there's probably some program lurking in the shadows that could be brought forward to solve everybody's problem and to heal everybody's woes, you know?
And you would not support that program, of course. If
I would hope to. That was a joke.
Sam Rohrer is for allergies, if you're listening from the Bob Casey campaign. Sam Rohrer wants you not to be able to breathe.
Sam Rohrer does not care about your allergies at all.
That's right. Just suffer along on your own, you know, and depend on self-government to control your problems. And you know, that's the worst way of life, many think. You know, if you without the heavy hand and the big hand and largesse of government, how can we survive? How did this nation survive before there were such large federal programs with running our people into debt? How did we survive? I wonder.
Well, Sam, I should point out to you that if you do get elected, instantly you will be a genius in solving all medical issues. I mean, right now your medical skills, I assume, are like mine, fairly nil. But if you're elected, you will know everything about how to solve all these problems.
Well, I'm glad there's some folks down there who know and are able to come with and point all of these people to intercede and make all of these major decisions between every doctor and every patient under this Obamacare plan. I mean, can't we just imagine how well that would work? And I tell you, I look forward to that. I mean, all that joking aside, I mean that shows, and what that shows is the ludicrousness of the concept that Washington can step in any way fix these problems that, as you were best describing earlier, Bob. I mean, we are based on individual freedom, self-government. We are not, this government, this republic was never established by our founders to envision the concept that someone sitting in Harrisburg or Washington would have to step in and dictate the daily aspects of our lives, such as our relationship between our doctor and ourselves, or so many things that are being laid out. I mean, it's ludicrous, and of course that's what we're suffering on. That's what the need is now, I think, in going to Washington next term is going to be, can we effectively turn some of these things back? Because we're going to have to, otherwise we're going to be strangled.
Well, let's talk a little bit inside baseball about the numbers and the campaign and the race coming up. If you look at the negative...
Let me just interrupt for one thing and pick up where Sam left off. One of the effects of this collectivist, coercive collectiveness is it inhibits personal initiative, individual initiative, which is the source of creativity. And it is just not merely a matter of we're going to be free so we can do whatever we want. We want to be free so we can create. And I think that there is an underlying, if you will, a religious issue. I was just commenting on the Jewish Exponent, which is a proponent of coerced collectivism, and pointing out that this is not the Judeo-Christian tradition at all. And there's a two-pronged attack, one on the Constitution and one on the Judeo-Christian tradition.
Absolutely, Bob. Couldn't agree with you more. It's exactly where it comes down to.
Well, I want to get back to the question about the campaign and the primary coming up a week from tomorrow. It seems, based on the fact based on who is getting negative ads run against them, that it's a three-person race. With all due respect to Dave Christian, who we liked having on the show, the negative ads are against you, basically, for voting for one pay raise in your 9-term career in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, for Tom Smith for, I guess, being registered Democrat for a couple decades, and for Steve Welch for having supported Joe Sestak and Barack Obama in the past, but not apparently voting for Barack Obama. So based on the fact that that's who's getting negative campaigns against them, that's who the race is between. Do you see things that way? How are you going to win?
We are seeing things that way, and I think increasingly the election appears to be probably increasingly between Tom Smith and myself, I think, as we're seeing and hearing things. And And whereas that I think is how things are going forward. I believe that what we're seeing is a attempt to bring a lot of let's say air power down, a lot of advertising on radio and primarily TV, and all of that effort, and we're doing some, but we're doing a lot on the ground and communicating one-on-one with people, and that is that you're going to see is I think the prevailing strategy as we move through the election coming into next Tuesday.
Sam, sorry.
Yes.
Sam,
yes,
I wanted to bring up one little irritating point. There was an email today that accused Tom Smith of being a liberal. As you may know, I'm a supporter of Tom Smith. I've talked with him many times.
Right.
He was a Democrat. There's no question about that. He voted Democrat in the primaries. If he voted in primaries, I don't even know. But He is certainly not a liberal. And I felt that email, which I understand was not authorized,
correct,
was unfair. It is correct to point out he's a Democrat, but that's what he was. But
that is correct. There was an article I think that someone else had written, which I wouldn't repeat, that had summarized some of those things, and someone who was doing some work for us put it out and inappropriately, without authorization, used our logo on the bottom, and that should not have been. That's a personal thing, but that is not a campaign issue, and I would agree with you fully. And that's not the kind of thing that we enter into. And I agree.
And let me just interrupt here, Sam. This is one of the reasons people are being attracted to you. So you made a mistake.
Right.
These things happen. Listen, this wasn't even you making the mistake, but even if you did make the mistake, these things happen. Admitting your mistake, we're in a period of renewal and redemption. All good to you, Sam.
Yeah, I would add the email did come out at 6 a.m. on a Monday, and I know Sam's hardworking, but he's probably not that hardworking.
No, I did not authorize that, and I've dealt with that. We try to be very, very careful. I mean, I've tried to be careful over my years in my personal life. I do not personally engage in the politics of destruction and any of that type. That's not anything good. Let's talk about the issue. Let's talk about what needs to be done. That's where it ought to be done. That's where I stay. So anyways, that was dealt with. Thanks for bringing that up, though.
But let's get back to what has to be done. And we're looking at mind-boggling deficits and debt. What's your plan when you get to Washington? How do you implement this? And going back also to the dynamics, because I'm hearing what you're hearing. This is between you and Tom Smith. Steve Welsh, actually, in my opinion, has been brought down by his entanglement with the establishment. And nobody will ever accuse you of being part of the establishment.
Yes.
They'll go negative about a lot of other things, but not that one. And so I think that this says something about people like you who are outside the mainstream of the establishment, but not outside the mainstream of what people are thinking about jobs, debt, and deficit. And
Bob, that is totally correct. A true conservative constitutional message is not outstream. The liberal far left like to make that look like that's some strange position, but demanding that we don't spend more than we have, demanding that the role of the federal government stays within the confines of the Constitution of all things is not outside the mainstream. The fact that we want to be able to start businesses and to expand it without having to go through miles and months of permit applications and approval processes from state or federal government, that's not outside the mainstream. And what we're finding as we're crossing the state is that being from Democrats' quarters, independent quarters, those folks are around me and that message because they understand that someone who is not carrying the water for the party, but carrying the water, or special interest, but carrying the water for individual freedom, with Constitution being the guide, is what we have gotten away from, and that is our moral compass, that is our constitutional compass to get back on track. And that's what people want these days now more than ever.
Sam, I have two questions, one of interest to a limited audience, and two, the second I'm going to ask you is of interest to a lot of people and not being talked about. The first, we talked about your support for Armenian genocide recognition, and it was my fault at host. I never asked you. Would you support the Restoration of Churches bill?
Yes, I absolutely will. I think that's a natural, logical adjunct of that support, and yes, I am.
I figured you would. I just forgot to ask the question when you were on previously.
We actually do have a listenership among the Armenian community, so we're sensitive to these issues.
Well, I mean, we're shared. We share collectively. We share so many of these things. If we walk away, any one of us walk away from any sector of our people who have been downtrodden and or abused or persecuted, and do not take up their offense as our own, we all will lose our freedom. And that's what this is all about.
Now, let me ask the 800-pound gorilla in the room question that hasn't come up in this campaign that a lot more people are talking about lately than the Armenian genocide, and that's the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman situation. Now George Zimmerman has been arrested. A lot of people, myself included, think unjustly given the facts. I think there's a lot of political grandstanding. It would be nice, I know you have to attack each other and all, and again, you haven't been doing that to the extent that other candidates have, but I'd like to hear your feelings about what's been going on in Florida.
As I look at that, I look at a circumstance that has been molded, shaped for advantage of not the broader public good, but of perhaps governmental special interest or political correctness. Daniel Greenfield wrote an article today that I looked at that picks up on this, and I think he makes a very, very good point, that really what we are watching is, got to step away and take a look at this, but what we're watching is an abuse of a process and not an issue of whether or not George Zimmerman is actually guilty, but that he is somewhat a part of a class of people that includes the NRA, and those who want to defend them. It's gotten much broader than the specific aspect of the case at hand, and that is the larger lesson here to be looking at, and the question to ask, and to say is the special interest, is the governmental political correct process of which we are witnessing and are a part of, is that juggernaut taken over this circumstance, trampling really, truly on justice and overlooking the actual factors at hand instead of and going into a larger picture to accomplish some broader goal that tends to demonize classes of people. I'm thinking he made a very, very good point in there, and I think that's my personal opinion. That is where we have more headed with this, and we have to be very, very careful at what is being done and allow justice unshaped by political correctness and special people who try to maneuver it for their own personal advantage. This is what we've got to be careful of, or we lose justice and protection for all of us. That's the thing here.
That's a great statement there, Sam, and I appreciate your making it. Did I catch a Daniel Greenfield reference in there? That'll be popular among our listenership. If not
well, you did, and that was a fine article. Fine article.
Yeah, one of his best. We saw it too, and he's straight ahead. And it's important that he's a pundit, but you're a politician. You're on the street. You're meeting people and saying exactly that this is the abusive process, and it ties into the Armenian issue. What happens to Zimmerman, if that process is corrupted, it affects you, Sam, Adam, me, all our listeners, because then we can all be targets of these political prosecutions.
It's Kafka-esque what's happening to him, almost. I think that's what Greenfield said in the article, something about Franz Kafka.
It's a whole political manipulation to undermine the process.
It is, and can I jump in here again? And this is kind of, Bob, what you talked about at the beginning with individual rights. We have individual freedom. We don't exist in a setting of collective freedom. We have individual rights given by God. We don't have group rights given by government. And if we move from that, we shape and change our freedom and the nature of government so significantly that we end up moving the power from the people to the hands of a few select group. The administration of justice is also the same way. If a few in power can take and shape circumstances and so alter the facts so as to produce a desired outcome of a few, the broad justice and freedom of all have been sacrificed, and that's the rub, and that's the real need, the real point of all of this. So, and it applies to federal government policy or state government policies where they take taxpayer dollars and loan them out to special interest and pick winners in the process rather than provide a level playing field for all. It's the same concept finding its way through in just different aspects of public policy.
Sam Rohrer, I know you have a busy 7.5 days ahead of you, and we really appreciate your coming on the show today.
Adam and Bob, good to be with you today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sam.